Grand Rising. It is Wednesday, December 6th, and today I will be getting into my deepest wound for me. Again, deepest wound is the same for the entire collective. The deepest wound is called covert emotional incest. But what I'm going to be doing today is speaking on what that looks like for me. I had an enmeshment with both of my parents to different degrees. I was a surrogate partner to both in different ways. But today, this one focuses on the relationship I had with my adoptive father. I was adopted as an infant. The final date of adoption was May 1989, so I was going into toddlerhood. And so, they are all I know. And also, that is, for those who know me by a different name other than Mercedes, that is the reason behind that. My birth name is Mercedes. And that is what I choose to go by now, because the acts, though they are forgiven, are not reconcilable. After some of the things that I experienced, I just can't. They are not allowed to have the title. And so by removing myself from their energy, I have reclaimed my birth name. So I'm going to go ahead and read what I have to say. I used to lay with the man that raised me in a very intimate way. I definitely remember spooning, and now that I'm an adult, I understand. Not only was it inappropriate at any time, but the times that I speak of, I was definitely too old. One time I was so upset because my mother interfered. My dad always let me do what I wanted, and I literally could not understand the problem. That's my dad, and he trained me up to be especially affectionate with him. I could not understand why she was treating me like I was doing something inappropriate. Instead of taking it up with him, she took it up with me. And I will never forget the look on her face and the confusion and the hurt that I felt because I didn't think of him in an inappropriate way. And I thought that's how everyone was with their fathers. I hated her for thinking of me like some kind of whore. This behavior still continued for a number of years after that, with his stamp of approval. I'm certain people would wish that I don't talk about this, but this is not to put my parents on blast or shame them. I'm not sure to what degree was passed down behavior and what was intentional, but what I do know is when I look at my peers and their dysfunction, I know I found the root of your pain, and I just want my story to help you. There's levels to it, and different expressions and ways of abuse. Yours might not look like this. But I'm telling the lot of you to investigate the relationships with your caregivers. What did it look like? How many things were happening in your home that you thought were normal? What kind of conversations did you have with your parents? Were they kid level or adult level? How much playing do you remember doing? I sat down with my child one day and realized I don't know the first thing about playing. How restrictive or how lax were your rules? As either extreme as an example, were you an individual or were you an extension of them? Meaning, when you get in trouble, is it you're embarrassing me? You know? Were they supportive of your relationships with your peers? Or were you isolated? Does everyone that come around you get disapproval? Were they highly judgmental? dig deep because I know 98% of the people around me have experienced covert emotional incest to some degree based on the day-to-day views on life, child rearing, and dating. It is not what you think it is. It is simply the act of a caregiver fulfilling their adult needs, hopes, dreams, and the protection of fears within a child. They take up the child as an alternative spouse or best friend, and what that raises, the problems that raises, is the current outcome of our community. Give me a second, because I don't like being in the dark. I mean, I don't mind the dark, but I want you to be able to really see me. And I'm back on my bullshit. Alright. So, me, I was daddy's little girl. As you probably suspected, I was daddy's girl through and through. Best friends ever. There's a few things that caused. People called me fast because I preferred no attention. I wasn't the typical tomboy. I still had an air of femininity, and that's by design. I was so enmeshed with my father that I only had male interest. I didn't really blend with girls. My relationship with my mother was non-existent up until a certain age, and I can tell you that age was when I had a child. And that is when my mother and I started to bond. I was 19 years old. She lived in the house, but she only ever argued with me. Any time I spent with her was developmental, like reading the Bible and delegating chores, and I often listened to her complaints of being stressed and tired. This is another form of the abuse. My father would take me pretty much wherever he went outside of work, and I would always feel really hurt if he didn't. My father kind of ran my life. I took up his interest. He would suggest more, what kind of career I should take up. I adopted a sense of humor. He told me what kind of clothes to wear, what I should do with my hair, was very obsessive about my skin. And I will never forget when he told me to go on a diet. He would reward me with money. As an adult, I can remember telling a friend, and I'm an adult at this age, when I tell my friend to go back to my house and check if there was money on the TV for me. I could expect it just for being his beautiful daughter. He also showered me with a myriad of compliments, and what was worse is some of those compliments came hand in hand with putting my mother down at the same time. We are so alike. Your mom isn't funny like you. Understand that not only am I experiencing abuse, my mother is experiencing abuse when this is happening. So I am witnessing abuse. I wasn't in competition with my mother, but when he says things like this in front of her, the shame and the confusion were at all-time high. Her resolve turned into, whenever I would speak, responding like, "Oh my goodness, that is so logical. You're just like your dad. I can't stand that." All I could ever think was how much she hates me. She enmeshed with my sisters as a result of my father's enmeshment with me, and this resulted in a hate drain. My home life was hell. I was always in charge because my parents weren't there, but my sisters would never listen to me as a result of their enmeshment with my mother. And I was always targeted with violence. My retaliation was always more violent, but as they stood together, I was the only one to get punished. My dad was also not home a lot. He was out of town often, sometimes weeks at a time. So I literally felt like the only person that loved me was my dad, and he was never actually available to me. What this actually is, you can find it in a movie, a Disney movie, Cinderella. voila, you have a woman who is only attracted to the emotionally unavailable. The thought of my dad dying was debilitating. I used to think, what will I do if he dies? No one else will know me. I will have no one. Though it seemed he knew me, he actually hadn't. I know his favorites. I know his hopes and dreams and anxieties. I know my dad on a real personal level. What he knows about me, he instilled in me, but doesn't actually know the individual behind all of that. There used to be a time in my early dating life that just about everything I said was something my dad told me. Now, I'm 32 now, and just left this lifestyle, I would say in the last 5 years. So you would want to know, okay, how did I get so grown and engage in the behavior for so long? Well, when I was 7 years old, he began to tell me, one day you will be all grown up and you won't love me anymore, and you won't want to kiss me in front of your friends, and you won't hold my hand in public anymore. And I was shocked, like, no, Daddy, I will always love you. I will never do that. And he would say this all the time over the course of my life. And so I made sure to prove my love for him. I was literally 20 years old, still holding my father's hand in the store. And there's some of you that are older than that, still kissing your parents on the lips. I said in my previous paragraph, I said that I thought all people were like this with their father. And it honestly wasn't even that. I thought that we were more evolved, better than, closer than. And that is how it should be. And all the other 20-year-olds not holding their dad's hands were cruel. That's really a more accurate description of how I viewed my affections between my father and I. Not a single male interest was ever approved. In fact, to this day, the first person I ever brought to my home, I haven't got over that. They banned him from the house. Anytime my sister saw me with him, they would tell on me. You can find that depicted in movies, The Notebook. The not approving ventures continued, and in fact, my entire family was in on it. Everyone is coupled up, but no one is good enough for Ashley Harris. That's my cousins. Nobody approves anybody. Nobody's good enough, and that is because I am the favored child in the family. So there's very high expectations for what is acceptable for me. So with that, no one's ever good enough. It left me on a search that almost still continues, looking for this non-existent perfect man. How deep is your relationship with your opposite sex parent? When you examine it, is it actually pretty one-sided? How many interests did you take up that weren't your own? What is your relationship like with your same-sex parent? Is there unnecessary or unexplained tension, and can you identify with my story? And I want to add, if you were raised in a single-parent home, you want to ask yourself these questions. It can be like this with your same-sex parent. Girl and girl, your mom is your best friend. That is very common in our community, that a woman will take up a friendship with her daughter. For boys, you may feel the burden of looking out for your mother, and you might even find that you have jealousy when your mother dates or something. That in the single family home, you definitely want to examine these questions. Now, covert emotional incest can turn overtly incestuous. And this is actually where my wound lies, and what began to turn into a type of seduction between my father and I after their divorce. So, in 1992, Woody Allen was caught sleeping with his longtime girlfriend's daughter. He has since married her, and if you watch him in the media talk about this, he will often speak on all he has provided her, almost as if having a God complex. Everyone knows a story of a stepson or stepdaughter sleeping with the stepmother or stepfather. When covert emotional incest happens between blood-related father and daughter and vice versa, often the only thing that keeps the bounds of it becoming overt would be the fact that they are related. The paternal and maternal instincts step in. A parent may feel sexual desire towards their child but are able to separate the moral boundaries. When it happens between two people who are not blood related, the adult does not have the paternal or maternal instinct boundary because they know this child is not genetically their own. The lack of that bond allows one to act on the desire. The man who raised me and who I identify as my father is not blood relation. I am adopted, which is why my case became so extreme. In this case, blood is thicker than water applies. The lack of blood assists in making boundaries thin. So, eventually the exposure, I experienced several exposures, and the only reason I know about Woody Allen is because that is what that story is what he used to try to groom me. But at this point, I was about 26 years old. Like I said, I was 26. And I was living with him. My parents were divorced at this point. And that is when light bulbs started to go off in my head that something is not right about my relationship with my father. I'd seen him naked. He'd seen me naked. There were certain things that just started to become uncomfortable, as it should have been uncomfortable from the start. But if you've been groomed from the age of 7, then those red flags just wouldn't present themselves. It was when he started talking about Woody Allen that it started clicking, like something's not right here, And I didn't immediately find this. I'm 32. I found this a month after my 32nd birthday this year, or 2020. So hindsight is 2020, right? So I didn't start there. I actually started with some of his other personality traits that started getting my attention. Codependency and narcissism. This is primarily something that is doled out by a narcissistic parent, but any person can do it. And a lot of times what it is just that it's passed down behavior. As far as me being seduced by him, I think there was a level of intention there, whereas my mother's abuse of me was more of a passed down behavior. So, I don't know, I don't know. I think to some degree hers was intentional because she was so upset with him. But some of the other things that she did, everybody, seeing your parent naked is not normal. I'm not innocent. I've done it. But again, this is passed down behavior for me. I've seen both my parents naked. So before addressing this, which I've only been addressing it for 7 or 8 months, there was a lot of behaviors that I was doing just like them with no realization that it was wrong. That's ignorance, okay? But if I were to continue it, that's when it becomes willful ignorance and just choosing not to do anything different once you have the knowledge. So, there are some people that think spooning is okay, and I did a test. This time I put it up on my Facebook. There were some people that were like, yo, there's nothing wrong with this. Grab a pillow. Well, if you need a pillow, then that lets you know that you likely experience arousal and when you're laying with your child. There are some people that don't see anything wrong with it without a pillow. There's some people who were like, oh, I see that. I'm beating both their ass. Okay? Here is where my mother went wrong. Children do not have sexuality. They have they don't have sexual orientation. They don't have sexuality. All they have is a gender. So when my mother addressed me, she addressed me as if I was a sexual being, and I was not yet. But by doing that, it opened up a portal to it much sooner than I needed it to be done. Him doing what he was doing was opening up emotional intimacy. And so that caused me to look to fulfill that. Because once you open that emotional intimacy, all the other types of intimacy that you need you're not getting all of them filled. So, a child cannot be fast. If a child is behaving in a fast manner, it is because someone has unlocked that within them, and they still don't even have any understanding of it. Let's see here. So I think this is where I'm gonna end. I actually wrote more, but I think I touched on it already, kind of just going off on a tangent, and I'm trying to keep my videos under 30 minutes. But I think right here, my case is really extreme for a reason. So that I can see the smallest instance. My sisters, they experienced a different type. Theirs isn't as deep as mine, but nonetheless, they experienced it, And so, I said my real name on here, my legal name, which will no longer be my legal name here pretty soon. But please do not, if you should find who these people are, please do not do anything or say anything to them. This is a lesson for all of us. And honestly, I feel that they are karmic energies, and they'll be free in the next life, as long as I keep doing my work here. So, have a wonderful day. Taurus, Mars moved into Taurus today. I'm really excited about that because I'm a Taurus. So, get me some fiery energy. Somebody said they need to light a fire in my butt. They tried. Inner fire. Inner. So, y'all have a great day.